So last week we were looking at the word Erev, and we're going to pick up that again this week. And who can tell me, just so that I'm not the only one droning on and on, who can tell me what we learned about Erev last week? Wasn't a whole lot. We did learn a little bit, but who can just kind of, you don't even have to look at your notes, just explain to me as best as you can from what you remember about Erev.
I can do that.
Sure.
I remember it being a mixing of like the light and the darkness without actually mixing together, but they're not actually mixed.
Right. That's really basically it. It's taking two substances and mixing them, but neither of these substances are going to be changed. And we see in that root word of ein resh bet that the weaving of fabrics, the woof and the weft, okay, the weaving of that is an example of Erev, where you're mixing two things to create a new thing, but neither the vertical threads nor the horizontal threads are changed, but you've made a new thing. Okay. I want to look at tonight some of the articles that I found in this Sephria Tahanit. It's a wonderful book. Goes over most things in the Torah that have to do with agriculture and the calendar. And the first article is from the Gemara, and this is the question that's asked in the Gemara, and it may seem a little off the subject of Erev, but it's not. I'll bring you back to understanding why I chose this passage. The Gemara asks, and according to that which entered our mind initially, that the sun is white. Okay, so that's what entered their mind initially, that the sun is white. Does it not redden in the morning and in the evening? The Gemara answers, in the morning it becomes red as it passes over the site of the roses in the Garden of Eden. Of course, we know that this is Talmudic, basically superstitious babble, right? Okay, so as it passes over the roses of the Garden of Eden, whose reflection gives the light a red hue. And in the evening, okay, so morning, remember, is the word boker. Boker, not sunrise, but as soon as the sky begins to take on light before the sun rises, they're saying that the sky will be red as the roses in the Garden of Eden. Okay. And then it says, and in Erev, in the evening, the sun turns red because it passes over the entrance of Gehenna, whose flames are reddened, whose flames redden the light. Okay. So they acknowledge that Boker and Erev both consist of a reddening. There's another little ditty here from the Sephria Tahanit, and it's the account of when the Warsaw Ghetto was being burned. It's kind of a sad little story, but it has a very important little piece of information. I'm just going to read you the little paragraph. I, Yosel, the son of Yosel Rockover in Tarnopol, a Gerer, a Gerer Hased, and I believe that does mean a convert, a Gerer Hased, descended from the saints and the great Zadokim, write these lines at the time when the Warsaw Ghetto is in flames. The house in which I am, let's see, I'm going to have to blow my paper up a little bit. I may lose the screen and not be able to see you guys, so you will have to unmute yourself in order for me to know you want to say something. Okay. The house in which I am now is among the last ones which the fire has not yet reached. It will not be long before it reaches this house too, will become the graves of its defendants and tenants. Listen, by the rays of an exceptionally red sun, which penetrates through the small and half-covered window from where we have been shooting at the enemy for days and nights, by the rays of the exceptionally red sun, I can see that it is now evening. Okay. In the Gemara, there's another paragraph that relates to the sun reddening at a certain time of day. The Gemara relates, Abia saw Rava, that's what they would call rabbi, Rava gazing westward on Shabbat Eve to determine whether or not the sky was red and whether or not it was twilight. Okay, so you need to know in these rabbinical writings, twilight was understood to be the time after sunset and before darkness takes over. Okay, so we have 3 references from the rabbinical writings that recognize the time of day when the sky turns red. Now, from here, I want to turn to some scriptures, and we're going to go to Genesis 24:63. I have to get my eSword up. Whoops. There it is. Okay, thank you for your tip. Genesis 24. Oops, let me screen share. Genesis 24:63. Okay, what I want to look at in this verse, it says Isaac went out to meditate. Okay, to muse is the word in Hebrew, in the field at eventide. Eventide is literally paneh, which means to turn and to look at. Paneh Erev. So Isaac went out to see the Erev. So Erev is known by sight. Now look at this. And he lifted up his eyes. If this was after sunset and before dark, in what the rabbinical writings call twilight, he would not be able to see. And he lifted up his eyes and he saw, and behold, camels were coming. The next reference is, whoops, where'd you go? Get up here. Well, let me stop sharing this. Having a bit of a glitch with my paper. Open. Sorry, guys. New computer. Oh, gosh. So why can't I just scroll right here? I can. I just have to be smart. Here we go. Got it. Okay, so now we're going to go to 2 Samuel 11:2. Second Samuel 11:2. It says, and it came to pass at eventide. Now this word is just at even, at Erev, that David arose off of his bed. Okay, I want to stop right here and I want to talk to you about this verse a little bit. We have, and in fact, I was just listening to Joshua Aaron, who's a neighbor of mine. He does updates. He's back in Israel. He had been traveling and touring the United States, which is neither here nor there. But I was listening to his little live he was doing from his porch, and he was talking about in these hot days, how it's so pleasant to be out in the evening, because during during the daytime, especially like yesterday, we were back up to 106 or 108. During the daytime, you just don't want to go out. You simply don't want to go out. So back to 2 Samuel 11:2. And it came to pass at evening, Erev, that David rose off his bed and he walked up on the roof of the king's house. And from the roof, he saw a beautiful woman washing herself. And the woman was very beautiful to look at. You can see very well in the Erev. Okay, the next verse we're going to look at is Genesis 24:11. And he made his camels to kneel down without the city by a well of water at the time of Erev. And even the time that the women go out to draw water. Okay, again, the women would not go out in the dark. They've got to see to water the animals and see to get home. This was happening in the first part of Erev as the sky begins to turn red. We're going to look at another one. Okay, this one, Jeremiah 6:4, is going to give us a wonderful description concerning Erev. This was like when I found this one, I was like, yes, Father, thank you. This is what you've been showing me. It was my moment for that. Jeremiah
One
says,
of the things, I'm sorry, I just want real quick. One of the things I noticed is that our cow knows, even with the times like it's getting darker earlier, our cow knows at a certain time when something looks like a certain way and starts moving for us to come put him in his house with his feed. So I'm loving the animals with this too. That's awesome.
oh yeah, and if you have chickens, they'll go to roost at the same expression of light, regardless of when it happens during the year. They go to roost at the same expression of light year round. Jeremiah 6:4, prepare ye war against her, arise, let us go up at noon. Woe to us, for the day goeth away, for the shadows of Erev stretcheth out. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. We have been told that Erev has shadows that stretch out. So I want to as well show you a couple of pictures here. I have to shrink a couple of things here. Let's see if I can share this. You see the picture of the snow and the trees, the sun and the shadows? That is stretched out shadows of Erev. Where's the sun in the sky? It's low on the horizon. We talked a little bit about this last week. I said one of the things you'll notice is that the sun no longer kisses the tops of the leaves, that it kisses the sides of the trees and the leaf tips from the outside. Let me stop sharing that one and give you another one. Whoops. Hang on. Gotta open it. Come on. Can you see this one? See if I can make it a little bit bigger. See where the sun is behind him and how the shadow is stretched out. I'm going to do another one. Okay, this is a beach picture, same thing. Look how long these shadows are. And the sun has to be over here low on the horizon. Okay. I do want to share one more little thing with you that kind of explains what the book of Jeremiah was talking about. Okay, so if we look at this diagram, any kid knows, if you can go back to your childhood, that your shadow does whatever you do. And if you've been out in the midday, your shadow is basically right underneath you. But the further that the sun descends, the further or closer to the horizon it is, let's put it that way, whether it's in the morning in the east over here, or if it's in the evening in the west, the closer the sun is to the horizon, the longer that your shadow gets. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. So we have a verse. I'm going to go back there as soon as I get some of these windows closed. That tells us in Jeremiah 6:4 that the day goeth away, for the shadows of the evening are stretched out. What is it that we've just learned? Well, we learned in Genesis 1:3-5 that evening and the morning were the first day. Erev and Boker were the first day, when the day begins. And we learned from Jeremiah that the evening contains long shadows. And we learned from the rabbinical writings that there's a time when the sky turns red, as we talked about these mixed shades of daytime mixing with nighttime. Okay, let me get here. So I also want to look at, we're just going to take eastward, and I'm going to look at the word twilight with you. The rabbinical explanation of twilight is that it is after sunset and before dark, but that also doesn't line up with what the Bible says. Get it up real quick. And I will screen share. Okay, so we basically are looking at a couple of words for twilight. Pull this over here just a little bit. I can't see it. There we go. It says in 1 Samuel 30:17, and David smote them from twilight. And this word twilight here is a very interesting word. It is called neshef. Neshef means properly a breeze. Okay, it is the same word where we get the word nephesh for soul. And when I looked at this word in the Hebrew lexicon, Hebrew Chaldee lexicon, it did tie all of those together. But the main thing it tied it to was to blow. Okay, we're going to come back to this word when we get a couple more things looked at. We're going to come back to understanding why this does not mean the time space between sunset and darkness. And then it says in 2 Kings 7:5, and they rose in the twilight, same word, in the breeze, to go out to the camp of the Syrians. Therefore they rose and fled in the breeze of the day and left their tents. Okay. This one says, let the stars of the breeze be dark. Let it look for light, but have none. Scroll some more. And this one, in the twilight, in the breeze, in the evening, in the Erev, in the black, in the Ishon, the little man of the eye, in the concealed night. Okay, this gives several terms and several divisions in the 24-hour period. Now here's the new word that means, in my opinion, the closest to what the rabbinical understanding of twilight would be, which is a time when you can no longer see the earth very well. And it's not yet night, but you can't see the earth very well. And this word here is alata. Alata means literally, if I can get down here, right here, dusk, to cover so it can't be seen. And in fact, in Ezekiel 12, we see it used properly in the first place it's used. We talk about the order of first appearance, to cover so you can't see. Okay, so it says, in their sight thou shalt bear it upon thy shoulders and carry it forth in the covering, in the alata, and thou shalt cover thy face. So we see it does mean an obscurity, that you see not the ground, for I have set thee as a sign unto the house of Israel. So twilight, possibly from the rabbinical understanding, is this word alata, but we do not find in its 4 times it's used anything to do with the beginning of the day. It's used in Ezekiel. All the times it's used in Ezekiel. Okay, stop sharing this. Okay, so to recap, I want to revisit the phrase Ben Ha-Eravim, because I want you to understand, try to explain to you this to you again. I just feel like I did such a lousy job last week. Ben Ha-Eravim literally is a verb phrase, okay? It's like saying, another verb phrase to help you understand what I'm saying is, it's like if you said the sentence, she's walking very quickly. That's a verb phrase. I'm telling you what the woman is doing. Okay, it describes the action of walking very quickly. And Ben Ha-Eravim is also a word phrase. What it literally means is the time of mixing. Okay, the time of mixing. There were 2 eras. The long shadows on the earth and the red sky was the first part of the era, and the no shadows on earth and the second sky and the red sky was the second part of Erev. They were both eras. They were both mixing. Okay, so the time of mixing, the entire time of that mixing is the Erev. Okay, but in between the time of the red sky, when there's shadows on the earth, and the time of the red sky, when the shadows are no longer on the earth, Ben Ha-Eravim, because it's plural, it means 2 mixings, not 2 Arabs, 2 mixings. This has been our fatal error the whole time in understanding this verse, is to look at it as a noun. Yes, in Hebrew, nouns can be verb phrases. They can describe attributes. They can describe processes. But we have to always keep in our mind that a Hebrew noun is always more than just a noun. And in this case, Ben Ha-Eravim is a verb phrase. Okay. We now know that Erev has a red sky. I'm going to take you to Matthew 16:2. Close that. Oops, I got a screen share, sorry. Screen share. Okay, this is Yeshua. Let's just start at 16:1. And the Pharisees, also with the Sadducees, came and tempting desired him that he would show them a sign from heaven. And he answered them and said unto them, when it is evening, Erev, You say it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. No mention of a sun here. And in the morning, in the Boker, it will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and lowering. Oh, you hypocrites. You can discern the face of the sky, but can ye not discern the signs of the times? Let's go to another one. And this one is Luke 12:54. And he said also to the people, when you see a cloud rise off the west, straightway you say, there cometh a shower, and so it is. And when you see the south wind blow, you say, there will be heat, and it comes to pass. You hypocrites, can you not discern the face of, you hypocrites, you can discern the face of the sky and the earth. But how is it you cannot discern the times? So there were signs that the time of the days were known by. And in Matthew, Yeshua said that evening has a red sky. All right. Okay, so I want you to think with me a little bit about, let me get rid of this here. Let me stop sharing. I think I have to stop sharing. Okay, it is stop sharing. I want you to think with me a little bit about the 7th month and the first day. There's a verse that everybody likes to use in, where is it? I just saw it. In Matthew 24:36, Matthew 25:13, Mark 13:32, and it's the verse, it says, but of the day and the hour no man, not the angels, knoweth not the angels in heaven, but only my Father. And this is repeated 3 times in the scriptures. It says, but of the day and the hour no man knoweth. So how do we know a day? We know it by the Erev. Okay? But if we're looking for an event that's coming, like a moed, like a feast, and we're going to take, for our example, the 7th month and the first day, since I know that many people believe that that is the day and the hour that no man knoweth, and I think it's a pretty good guess and application of that understanding. So we're going to look at the 7th month and the first day against this verse. The first thing it tells us is it mentions the day comes before the hour. What starts a day? An Erev starts a day. And if we're looking for when the first day of the 7th month begins, we have to wait for the hour that the moon is going to appear. Okay, so when we think from our Gregorian thinking, from our Western thinking, we would say, well, an hour is a division of a day. So why is it an hour listed first? It's because Abba's not Gregorian. Abba knows the day begins at Erev. And if we're looking for the beginning of a new month, if we're looking for Rosh Hashanah, rabbinical, if we're looking for Yom Teruah, we have to wait after Erev begins, after the sun has set, bin ha'erevim, and even probably after Erev without shadows into that time we call Lila or night, to know if it's the first day of the first month, or 7th month, first day of the 7th month. So the verse that talks about the day and the hour supports what I'm trying to show you. That Erev would begin a day, but if we're looking for a first day feast, the Yom Teruah, within a certain day, then we have to wait for the hour the moon would appear. Is that about as clear as mud, everybody? Did you get what I was trying?
It's pretty awesome because it takes about a whole hour, doesn't it?
It takes about from sunset, okay, from according to science, for the golden hour on either side of the moon, on either side of sunset, is about 70 minutes. So yes, I have never seen a new moon right at sunset.
That's amazing.
Okay. So now we need to go. Okay, so the next thing I want to get into with you is a really touchy subject for the body, because it also has to do with when we start the calendar. If you have been with this Bible study from the teaching about how we determine the new moon, then you will recall how on Passover, if we don't start the count for the biblical calendar on the first day of the new crescent moon, then when we reach the 14th day for Passover, we're not going to have a full moon. You guys remember that? Remember vaguely something about this, me talking about it in the past, that we've got to start the count on the new moon. If we started on the dark of the moon, it's the 14th day of Passover is not going to happen on the full moon, which is basically the Gilgal or the Golgotha or the Galuth, which means the head or the full moon, when Messiah was crucified at Golgotha on the 14th day at Passover. So all of these patterns tie together. So we have this picture of needing the fullness of the moon very close to the Passover date. What's really interesting about that, it is from the new moon, the full moon. That first morning on the full moon, you will have Genesis 1:14 in the sky. You will have the morning star, you will have the full moon, and you will have the sun in the morning sky. You will have all three on that day or two, literally just day or two, usually 24 hours. In the middle of the lunar cycle on the 14-15 day, okay, you'll have all three of those in the sky. Now you're going to see why it's important. I love this. Genesis 1:14 through 18, and I'm going to open it and read it to you in the King James first. Oh, got to share the screen. Gotta watch me, gotta share the screen. Okay, here we go. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from night. This is such a poor translation. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And then let the lights in the firmament of the heaven, and let them be lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And so it was. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. And he made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth and to rule over the day and over the night and to divide the light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. Let's stop sharing. Okay. What I want to do now is I'm going to read this to you verbatim from the Hebrew. And you're going to see a bit of a different story. And you're going to see, since I'm reading it verbatim, that that a big lamp in Hebrew is going to be a lamp big. Okay, so don't let that make you stumble, because we're one of the few languages that actually puts our descriptor words in front of the noun. Most languages put it after the noun. Okay, but here we go. Elohim said to exist lamps in the space and the expanse of heaven, to divide between the day and between the night. Okay, stop right there. What are these lamps for? They're to divide between the day and between the night. What does Erev and Boker decide? It decides when a day begins and when a day ends, as in a time period, not as in the measure of light and darkness. We're going to see this is a different thing. And Elohim said to exist lamps in the expanse of heaven, to divide between the day and between the night. And that word again is that bin word, like we saw in bin ha-erevim. So he's putting something in the middle of the day and night. Okay. And exist signs and seasons and days and years. What is causing our signs and seasons and days and years? It is the day and the night that is making our signs and seasons and days and years. It's not the lamps in the sky. It's going to become clearer as we go on. Genesis 1:15. And to exist lamps in the expanse of heaven, to light on the earth, and to exist, yes, and so it was. Verse 16, and Elohim made 2 lamps large, the lamp big to rule the day. So the lamp big, the sun, is an indicator of Yom, not Boker, of Yom, okay? And the lamp small to rule the night, and stars too. So the moon is an indicator of night, not Erev, but of night. And gave to them Elohim expanse in the heavens to light the earth, to rule the day and the night, and to divide the light and the dark. And Elohim saw it was good, complete, lacking nothing. Okay, so what we have here actually is an understanding that the sun and the moon were to rule the period in a 24-hour cycle that was called day and night. Erev and Boker rule when we begin the timing. Erev and Boker rule when we begin timing. The sun and the moon rule when a Yom and a Lila. They reign in the Yom and the Lila. Okay, so he also said that he put them between. Go back up there. To exist lamps in the expanse of heaven, to divide between the day and between the night. What were we just talking about on the 15th day of a lunar cycle? What 3 signs are between what was night and what was day? We have a sun, a moon, and the stars. The sun and the moon were given to know the daylight hours from the nighttime hours. The star and the moon can be seen. The star and the moon, the morning star and the moon, can be seen in the Boker, the morning sky. But the sun is seen in the Yom sky. The star and the sun can be seen in the Erev sky. There is that same star that will come in the sky before I see the moon every time, believe it's Venus. So the star and the sun can be seen in the Arab sky, but the moon is seen in the night sky. And everybody follow that.
Are you saying that it's only on the 15th day or that's every day?
Only on the 15th day do those three luminaries come together in the daytime sky. It's actually the daytime sky because the sun is out. Only on the 15th day. But what I'm saying is that every day you can see the sun and the moon. I'm sorry, the moon and the star in the Boker sky, in the breaking of the light, when the light starts growing before the sun is up. Every Boker, you can see the moon and you can see the star. And every Arab, you can see the sun and you can see that star.
Okay.
Did that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of new terms in there, and I know that we don't use those on a daily basis, so it can be kind of hard to grasp. Okay. Now I want to go to the most exciting part for me. Okay.
Becca Aloma's, I think she might be trying to get in.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yes, she is. There she comes. All right. So, gotta find my little place here in this other article. Okay. I'm just going to tell you, actually, I'll read you a partial of it. We're going to lay aside the idea that that Passover is actually 8 days. I'm going to read you one brief little article from Josephus, and then I will, because that's on that memory stick that I got you guys praying over, okay, that the documentation that I had on the courses of the priests that offered the lambs in the temple, while at the same time the priests themselves kept a domestic Passover, meaning a Passover still in their homes in the 1st century during Herod's temple days, okay? There was a division in the calendar, and this documentation I have on that stick that is so important that I can't locate, I can't bring to you tonight. So please, please, please pray that I find that stick. But I am going to read you one excerpt from Josephus that talks about Passover being 8 days. Okay, this is in the Book of Antiquities of the Jews, Book 3, Chapter 10, Paragraph 5. And in the month of Xanthicus, which by us is called Nisan, or by us the 1st month, and is the beginning of the year, on the 14th day of the lunar month, for this is the month that we were delivered from bondage under the Egyptians, the law ordained that we should every year slay that sacrifice, which I before told you we slew when we came out of Egypt, and that which is called the Passover. So we do celebrate Passover in companies, leaving nothing of what we sacrificed till the morning. The Feast of Unleavened Bread succeeds that of Passover and falls on the 15th day of the month and continues 7 days, wherein we feed on unleavened bread every one which days 2 bulls are killed, 1 ram and 7 lambs. Okay, and then it goes on and it says, talks a little bit about the first fruits of barley, While they supposed it was proper to offer God, whom they obtained this plentiful provision in the first place, they offer the first fruits of their barley in the following manner. They take a handful of the ears and dry them and beat them small and purge the barley from the bran, that they bring 1/10 deal to the altar up to God, casting one handful of it upon the fire, and the rest used for the purpose of the priest. And after that, it is that they may publicly or privately reap their harvest. They also, at this participation of the first fruits of the earth, sacrifice a lamb as a burnt offering to God. So we have proof that barley was the first fruits during the week of unleavened bread, and we have Josephus recording that Passover period was 8 days and not just 7 days. Okay, the article that we're praying for that I hope I'm going to bring you, possibly the next time we return to this subject, which I think will be week after next, talks about the 3 courses of priests that were required to offer the lambs in the temple during the Yom, during the sun time of the 14th day. Now you see why I went through all those phrases. I'm being very specific about the timing. The writing of Josephus says that the temple priests, the Sadducees, still kept a Passover in their house. And it records that the 3 courses of priests in the Yom, I'm sorry, let me back up, that the Sadducees, the temple priests, kept the Passover at the 14th day in the Erev in their homes, like we read in Exodus, and that the Pharisees kept the Passover in the 14th Yom, the sun hours, around 3 o'clock in the temple. That's where the lambs were sacrificed. Josephus goes into great deal about the courses of priests that were necessary, and that came to be because the Pharisees were offering their sacrifices leading up to the end of the 14th day. So in order to get all of these lambs offered in the temple before the end of the 14th day, they were backing up these courses of 3 priests to start about 3 p.m. in the afternoon in the Yom of the 14th day, in the sun portion of the 14th day. Okay. I'm so sorry. I cannot show you that in writing right now. Please pray that I either find that link again, God brings it to my memory, or that I find that memory strength. This is so important, because what I'm going to show you now solves the riddle of what happened at Messiah's death. First of all, I'm going to show you one more scripture. In fact, I'm just going to read it to you. Go back up here really quick, and it says, Deuteronomy 16:16. But at the place which the Lord thy God shall choose to place his name in, there shalt thou sacrifice the Passover at Erev, at the going down of the sun, at sunset, at the season when thou comest out of Egypt. Okay. I've been telling you that Ben Ha-Eravim is a phrase that describes something that happened in the middle. In this process of the mixing, when the shadows are on the earth and the sky is red, it's because the sun is still in the sky to make those shadows. At the period of the red sky and the shadows are no longer on the earth, in between those, what has happened? The sun has set, because in the second half of the Erev, there are no longer any shadows on the earth. Ben Ha-Erevim is specifically talking about the point of the setting sun, just as Deuteronomy 16:16 explains. Now we'll go to the other verse. We're going to go to the 9th hour. Hang on. All right. I'm getting ready to show you something, and I'm going to tell you ahead of time what I'm showing you. I'm going to show you that even though man changed the time that the lambs were being offered in Jerusalem during the year that the Messiah was crucified, I'm going to show you that even though his sign of crucifixion was supposed to happen exactly at the going down of the sun, the enemy of our God could not rob that sign at the death of our Messiah. All right. It says right here, get back here. It says, and at the 6th hour, which is roughly noon, there was darkness all over the land until the 9th hour. This is what the word darkness means. Do you remember what our word, where did it go? Come on. Well, don't you know I'll have trouble with this part? Okay. Darkness, shadiness, that is obscurity. It was not so totally dark that they lit lamps. It was shadiness. What happens when we start mixing shade? Here's the root, skia, shade or shadow, okay? An undubration, okay? Okay, so what happens when we start mixing the light and the darkness together as we go towards the setting sun? It starts becoming shady. The sky is not bright as it is. How many of you went out and set for the rising sun? Like
I
we
did.
talked. Okay, you did. Okay. Did anybody else sit with a rising sun or a setting sun?
Yeah, I caught one.
Okay, so you know that there are shades of light as the sunlight approaches. There are shades of darkness as the sunset approaches. So what we have right here in Matthew 27:45 is a supernatural Erev until the 9th hour. I'm sorry, until that began at the 9th hour, okay? 6th hour and went until the 9th hour, which was roughly 3 p.m. when the lambs were beginning to be offered in the temple by those 3 courses of priests that I told you about. Then in the 9th hour, the Messiah gave up the ghost in Matthew 27:46. Whoops, hang on, let me use this. Okay, and he died in Matthew 27:50. He cried with a loud voice and died. Immediately after Messiah died, the world proceeded towards the natural Erev that happens every day. Did you follow that? The Father created a supernatural shadiness of light. Shadiness, shade. Not darkness, shadiness. Starting about noon until the third hour, there was a supernatural Erev. Then, as if a sun is setting, the Messiah gave up his life after he asked God why he had forsaken him. And then that time proceeded into the natural Erev. Yeshua died bin ha-Erevim. He died between the Erevs. A darkening and a mixing that happens supernaturally, and the natural Erev that would come with the end of the day. Any questions so far?
So would that mean it was like our typical dusk for many hours is what you're saying, our typical?
Yes.
So,
yes.
and then when he let go of the spirit, then I'm making the assumption it would then have gone on to darkness, being 9 p.m. Is
It
that
doesn't
correct?
say that in the scripture. It only gives an hour, but it was that hour that he died.
The hour between the eras. You're saying.
The hour between the supernatural Arabs in Jerusalem.
Right. The 3 o'clock hour, you're saying.
Yes, yes.
It was Yom during that 3 o'clock hour then.
It was Yom during that 3 o'clock hour. Okay. See, yes, you need to, can you unmute yourself, Scott or Shauna? See, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, this is Scott, and I had a question.
Yes.
Are we talking about just God made it cloudy or God darkened the sun?
It says that it became shady. It says it became shady.
There's no explanation of exactly what happened.
No, there's no explanation, but you know, I have some thoughts because you don't see it as a big phenomenon. I mean, you don't, it's not recorded in scripture in the New Testament. A lot of people, okay, so rewind. A lot of people talk about an eclipse. A lot of people talk about all these phenomenons in the sky that could possibly have happened to cause this darkening process, and yet not a word of it is recorded. So my thought process on this is maybe it was not such a, like a celestial wonder. I'm going to see if I can find a picture from you. Did you guys see the picture I put up from their first day of Sukkot here in Israel, how red the sky and how shaded the horizon was from the dust storm that come through? Let me see if I can get that real quick for you. Hang on.
Hey, Becca.
Yes, ma'am.
Could that have been, I mean, just when you were talking about that, that when you were defining the word darkness, what I went back to in my thoughts was when the darkness was hovering over the face of the deep, and God, his spirit moved and he said, let there be light. So I feel like there might be some correlation to that, to the crucifixion, to that somehow. I just wanted to share that with you.
Okay, say that again real quick.
So when you were defining the word darkness,
Yes.
and in regard to the
Shadiness.
crucifixion of Yeshua,
Yes.
I went back to, and what came to me was when there was darkness over the face of the deep, and the spirit of Elohim hovered, and then he said, let there be light, because it's almost like a picture even of that. When there was darkness, he gave up his spirit, and then at that, I mean, I know he went into the grave, but that
was a point when he was going to conquer death. You're right. I see what you're saying.
so that just came to me. I wanted to share that with you.
Okay, so I want to share with you this picture from the first day of Sukkot this year, the National Sukkot, which was, we're on their 8th day now. So this was eight days ago. This is a darkening of the sky, and nobody thinks a thing about it because it's something that happens here frequently. Here we go. This was about 10 o'clock in the morning on the first day of Sukkot. Can everybody see that? The red sky?
Wow.
Okay, so when I'm thinking about something that could have happened to darken the sky, that Josephus doesn't write about an eclipse or an ellipse or some kind of supernatural phenomenon. It just really, in all the historical writings, that day comes out to be a non-event. My mind turns to what things happen here naturally in Israel that could cause a shadiness. Okay, so let me give you another so that you get the understanding of how things that we're used to would not be recorded in the scripture as something that's important, but for you it's important and it's going to add understanding. When we
Also, I want to say during that eclipse that we had in the United States, when it was a couple of years ago, I was in Florida, and one of the only reasons why I knew the eclipse was actually happening, because I'd forgotten about it, was when I walked out, was the unusual shadows of the trees. They were much, so it was nothing like what you just showed us whatsoever. It was still daylight going into like a darkness, but there was no miscoloration whatsoever. It was just these weird shadows
right,
for us in Florida.
and remember, if we're looking for an Erev type event, which we know it has to do with a red sky, right? Okay, our dust in Israel makes a red sky. It blows red. When you look at the horizon and that dust filters up above the horizons, and I'm looking in the distance, there's a band of red. Our dust blows red. It filters red light. So, okay, so that would be pretty much a non-event because we have sandstorms that come out of Egypt all the time. Alama, did you have something? You got to unmute yourself.
No, I didn't. I raised my hand by accident. It was an
Okay.
accident.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so again, so here's what we're going to look at is we're going to look at another thing that the Bible wouldn't tell you, but it's really important to understand these things from the land. When we reach the barley harvest, normally we get about 50 days of the Sharav winds. Sharav is what some people call them. It's more of a meteorological term. What the locals call them is the Hamsin winds. Hamsin. Interesting enough, these Hamsin winds last about 50 days, and they start right about the barley harvest. Now, what happens between the barley harvest and those 50 days? At the end of those 50 days, what happens? We've reached Shavuot, right? Everybody with me? The counting of the sevens and numbering to the 50th day. And these Hamsin winds, which is Arabic for 50, and is very similar to the Hebrew, which is Hamashim, which is 50. So the Hamsin winds are 50-day winds. Why do we need 50-day winds in between the harvest of barley and the completion of the harvest of wheat? What are you doing for 50 days? You're winnowing. You're throwing the chaff up in the air and you want the grains to fall down. And baby, if the wind ain't blowing, you ain't winnowing. We need those strong winds to blow that chaff away. Every time a fork of chaff goes up in the air, the grains drop and the chaff blows away. And it is every year during the grain harvest between the beginning of barley to the end of Shavuot, when the wheat harvest is completed, that we get 50 days of wind to help us with the grain harvest. So these things are normal, and they fit within the regular schedule of God. He always sends the dust storms. They come out of Egypt. They carry in some of their topsoil, and our skies are red. Okay? So can I tell you 100% that a dust storm caused Erev on the day that the Messiah was crucified? No, I can't. But I can tell you that it wasn't recorded as a supernatural event in any of the historical writings. Does that answer your question, Scott?
Yeah, that sounds great, because that makes sense. Otherwise, other cultures might have recorded it also if it was a big event.
It was a big event. Yeah.
So it was, like I said, it was a usual happening.
Yes, especially because remember, he was crucified on Passover. So we're just a few days away from the barley harvest. So those winds were due at any moment.
And in other times, you've always heard when a supernatural event happened, the people were amazed, they fell down on their face. In this case, it was just, okay, it got dark. So,
It got dark. Yeah, big deal.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
You said the number 50 can you pronounce that again in Hebrew?
In Hebrew, Hamashim.
Hamashim. So when you said that, is it the same root word? Probably not. I was thinking of Hamashiach. So I heard that. It's probably not the same root word then, right?
No, HaMashiach means the Messiah. Ha is the.
Right.
So no, it's a Mashiach.
Okay. It's different. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's amazing how I want to say the majority of the religions, the Christian religions, have made that out though as a supernatural event, to now turn out that it wasn't probably.
But it was a supernatural event, the timing of it.
Okay.
I mean, it had to have been supernatural. I mean, what the writers of the New Testament are telling us is that there was a type of Erev that preceded Messiah's death. It was important enough that they wanted us to know that this shadiness appeared for this space of time before his death.
Okay. So what you're saying is, then why they wouldn't have recorded it or dropped to the ground like you were saying? Why would they not have reacted in that way? You think they didn't realize it was a supernatural event at that moment?
They didn't realize it. No, because like we were talking about, let's see, Sunday, Yom Rishon, I believe that was Thursday, Yom Rishon would have been the beginning of the barley harvest.
Wow.
So 3 days later, the barley harvest would proceed. And we've had years here in Israel when these Hamasim winds, and it's not a 50 days and no more. Sometimes it's a little less than 50 days. Sometimes it starts before wave sheaf day. Sometimes these winds actually will aid in the ripening of the barley because they're hot. They're a very hot wind and they blow hard. And as they blow those grains, they dry. They dry the plant, moisture out of the plant. Now the rain is no longer falling because the hot winds have returned. So it's like an oven and a drying process. What was it we read in Proverbs about? No, it was Psalms about the men as the grass of the field. When the hot breath of God blows on them, you can't tell where they once stood. Okay, so all of this is allegories and biblical pictures of humanity.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I'll share with you later that correlated with something that happened to me many years ago. So when you
Okay.
said the hot breath. That's just amazing. See, this is the first year though, all the years I've known you, where I heard you mention that it's needed to blow the chaff away. That was pretty amazing too.
Well, I'm going to tell you, my learning never stops. I actually learned this just yesterday.
Wow.
I am always researching. I am always researching how the ancient ways, who's still doing things the ancient ways, this thing, that thing, that thing. And I was watching this documentary on Azerbaijan, and it's called Waiting for the Wind. And they
Wow.
were winnowing barley, and the wind wouldn't come, and they couldn't winnow barley. And I'm watching this, and it was just like the voice of God was saying, "Wake up! Are you looking at the Hamson, or what are you looking at? Come on, get with the road." And I'm like, "Oh, so we gotta have winds for 50 days." Oh, it's because of the grain harvest, So my learning never quits. I'm always learning. I'm always doing research, always doing more.
Wow.
And so, yeah, no, I actually didn't know before 2 or 3 days ago, the correlation between the winnowing and needing the Hamson.
Mm, amazing.
It is really
Thank you.
amazing. You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so how long have we been going? Can anybody tell me? I don't want to run you for hours and hours like I normally do. I don't want to wear you out.
I think it's only been like an hour and a half.
Okay, all right. Okay, so then let me look and see here. Is there something else I want to cover on this little bit? Okay, you know what? No, I think this is where I want to stop rather. Okay, I just want to finish with this, that sunset on the 14th day can only reside inside of the 14th day, at the beginning of the 14th day. It has nothing at all to do with the end of the 14th day and touching the 15th day. The illegal 7-day calendar created by the Pharisees and carried out by the Sadducees, okay, that's what that was. It's important to see the Passover as a standalone day. Now, I cannot prove this, but I do want to tell you that I believe that when Messiah was crucified and died, in that hour that he died, it was the beginning of when the lambs were being slain for the Pharisees in the temple, okay? It was the beginning of the 14th Yom proceedings for all of those lambs that were illegally slain. Illegally slain because they were slain in the wrong location at the wrong time. Okay, the Exodus tells us that it was a lamb to be slain in the households by the heads of the house. Now, in that first century, the Pharisees were having their lambs slain in the temple. So Messiah gave his life just as these illegal lambs were being slain. And I want to suggest to you that Messiah was the first illegally slain lamb of that day. The first illegally slain lamb of that day. Colossians 1 tells us that he has to be first in everything. Everything. Everything was made by him, through him, and for him. And he precedes everything. On that day, when those lambs began to be slain that were illegal, according to the calendar that Elohim had made for the people, he would have been the first to give his life. So the Messiah, literally in the moment he gave his life, died in their very act of sinning for their very sins. and he was killed unjustly. He was killed for sedition against the temple, and he was killed for saying he was the Son of God. So he was killed illegally, no matter how you look at it. Okay, I think that's where we're going to stop unless somebody has some more questions.
Are you planning on talking about the fringes today, or is that for next week?
That's for next week. Yeah, I'm going to put the calendar aside until week after next, and then we'll do the fringes. I'll go inside and out and show you all the ins and outs of the fringes, take you all the way through the Bible, show you to the best of the scriptures description, how they were used, and that'll be for next week. And then I'll tell you, then we're going to go back up and go back and pick up some of the dry nuts and bolts of the calendar after that, and look at the Passover. And I'm going to break it down, and I'm going to show you how the week of unleavened was actually the promise to Abraham, but it had to be preceded by the work of the Messiah on that separate 14th day. So at that following week, it may be a little bit more dry, but hopefully not, because I just really want to make you sure beyond a shadow of a doubt of what I'm showing you.
When we are referring anyone to your videos, can they just find it through your own YouTube channel if there's
Mhm.
something that so they can just go there and pick and choose what they want to watch? And okay,
Yep, they sure can.
because
Okay,
you covered a lot of stuff that a lot of division is caused from.
yes, it
And
is.
today you hit on some of the hardest nails to drive in when we're explaining. So, and you explained it in a very detailed way where it's just very easy to understand. So thank you.
Well, you have to, and this is why I went through the descriptors with you, okay? That twilight meant this time when you couldn't see. If you know what these terms literally mean, and if you know that Elohim used them to give us divisions in the days, because he was saying different things about different things. Okay, and that's what we've got to focus on. What is he saying here? What is the subject? Is the subject the sun, moon, and the stars, or is it the timing of the day and the night? Actually, it's the timing of the day and the night, when the sun is in the sky and when the moon is in the sky. And Erev is the beginning of the day, and Boker is the beginning of the morning. So the Father is really, 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 really specific within these phrases he uses. And if we'll look at them and how he's using them specifically, it makes a lot more sense. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.